Hi folks, it's Coach Kelvin here from the We Run Virtual Run Club, and We Run coach for Leeds and surrounding areas as well as online coaching. In this little video, I'm going to talk about two different training approaches and why one of them doesn't really work very well for most people and one of them works really well for everybody. And those two approaches are polarized training versus pyramidal training. And in this video, I'm going to explain what they are and some of the pros and cons of the two. And then in a future video, maybe my next video, I'm going to explain why less fit runners or those training on lower volumes should be doing more moderate running. So not like just super high volume, just most of their running super easy. So let's start with polarized training. As the name suggests, it's kind of either end of the spectrum where most of the running is easy and a small amount is hard. It's volume dependent, so it's more suited to runners who are doing maybe upwards of 80k a week. It works for runners whose easy pace is already quite fast. So even from the easy running, they're getting a quite high stimulus. It misses an important intensity, which is kind of zone 3, which is that sort of middle ground, that moderate running. It doesn't bridge the gap well between intensities. I'll explain this in a little bit more detail when I look at that in pyramidal training. And it suits a very small number of very well-trained runners training for very specific events. So it used to be something that a lot of the elites did, and it kind of worked its way into sort of recreational runners training. And even now, there are very few elites that would use polarized training as runners. Almost everybody uses pyramidal training for a number of reasons. So let's move on to pyramidal training. So pyramidal training is mostly easy with a moderate amount of medium intensity and a small amount of hard. So it works well for runners training on all volumes from low to high volume. It works for slower and faster runners. It covers all intensities. It bridges the gap well between intensities. And what I mean by that is, it works really well for a runner to put in a bit of a base of easy running and then add some moderate running before they add the harder running. If someone, isn't sort of let's say mechanically strong to do lots of easy running, most of the running rather easy, and then just doing really hard running, they'll get very little training response from that, and it comes with a very high risk. So the risk versus reward doesn't make any sense. But if a runner's done a good percentage of their running easy, and then they bring in a decent percentage of moderate running, and then the gap between the moderate running and the hard running isn't as big a jump, so it's much easier to manage. And pyramidal training works for all runners, including less fit runners and those training on lower volumes, because the easier the running is, the more of it we need to create a training stimulus. So if, let's say, a runner was trying to do the sort of polarized model, and they were training on low volumes and they were keeping all their easy super easy, that wouldn't be a strong enough training stimulus for that runner to adapt. So the less volume a runner is running on a weekly, monthly and annual basis, the less volume, the more moderate intensity they should be adding into the training. But I'd like to cover that in a little bit more detail in a future video. But in this video, I just want people to consider why almost everybody should be doing pyramidal training and very few runners should be doing polarized training, and that tends to be reserved for the tiniest number of elite level runners training for very specific events. So if you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments below. And for now, happy running.